Hello everyone. Tonight, we journey deep into the Arctic wilderness, where the wind never really stops, and the snow talks in whispers. You're nestled under a pile of fur-lined blankets in an igloo, or maybe just your bed with an extra throw. But out here, the world is blinding, white, bitter cold, and breathtakingly silent. Except for that sound. That strange, slow-rising whistle that cuts through the wind like a familiar voice in a dream. It's not music, not exactly. It's more like a spell, and somehow dozens of sled dogs stop dead in their tracks eyes on you. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know where you're listening from, and what time it is right now. I always love seeing who's tuned in from which corner of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stir awake under stiff caribou hides your eyelashes clumped with ice. Outside your igloo, the wind shrieks like a haunted violin dragging snow sideways across the tundra. But what really yanks you into the day isn't the cold or the hunger or even the distant barking, it's that whistle. High, slow, smooth. You know the one. And your body reacts before your brain catches up. That whistle means get ready. It means dogs. It means sled. It means go. You push out into the blue-tinted daylight breath, immediately turning to frost. Your boots crunch over packed snow, and there they are, your team already half-hitched and full of pent-up winter energy. 10 dogs, all muscle and mischief pacing in the harness eyes, wild and noses twitching. They're barking, yipping, throwing up snow with each stomp. You try to shout, but it's useless, your voice is nothing in this wind. So you do what the elders taught you. You purse your lips, tongue curved just so, and let out your whistle, the one you've practiced for years. 3 notes, rising, then falling. It's not loud, but somehow it slices through the wind like a needle through hide. And just like that, silence. The dogs freeze, ears up, eyes on you. The lead, a grizzled old husky named Taktu, even sits. You exhale. That's the power of the whistle. It's not magic, though. Honestly, some days it feels like it. It's not even a universal language. Each whistle is unique, tuned to the dogs like a fingerprint. Some Inuit hunters say the whistle carries more than sound. It carries your mood, your intention, even your respect. Historians still argue whether these whistles originated purely for dog sledding, or evolved from older hunting calls used to mimic Arctic foxes or birds. One thing's clear in this world: if you can't whistle, you don't lead a team. You tighten your hood and start checking the sled. Hand-carved runners bent with steam over a driftwood fire. Rawhide lashings strung tight. Your fingers are already going numb, so you hurry. One snapped line out here could mean an overnight on the ice, or worse. The dogs twitch and glance back at you, tails wagging now that they've heard your voice again. Not your words, just that whistle. The sound says, I'm here. You're safe. Let's move. It's funny, really. In the city, you could yell at a touchscreen and it wouldn't care. Out here, one whistle and 10 half-wild beasts bow their heads. You load the last of your supplies onto the sled. Seal meat, a battered lantern, a chunk of frozen bannock, and a knife sharp enough to make your fingers nervous. You lash it all down, then give a low hum, another trick taught by your uncle. The dogs shift lean into their traces. The sled creaks. Your breath fogs out again, and just before you signal the go, you think back to how you learned that whistle. Bent over a bone whistle carved from walrus ivory, tongue aching from trying to mimic the shape. Your uncle standing behind you, arms crossed, telling you, "The dogs don't care how loud you are. They care how real you are." You thought he was just being dramatic. Now you know better. Your whistle isn't just a command, it's a promise. It tells the dogs you won't push them off a cliff. It says you won't lead them into thin ice. And it says that if a polar bear shows up again like it did last spring, remember that. Yeah, you probably wouldn't survive that. You won't bolt. You'll stand your ground. Probably whimper, but not bolt. Your hands grip the handlebar. You feel the sled twitch, dogs itching to run. You close your eyes. One deep breath in, then you whistle again, and the world blurs. Snow kicks up in waves, the sled lurches forward, and your team moves as one. No barking, no yelping, just the rhythmic sound of paws hitting snow. That's the beauty of a trained team. They want to run, but they want to run with you. You glide over the ice like a whisper, the horizon stretching endless and white in every direction. You whistle again, short, sharp, a turn signal. The dogs veer left just a few degrees, enough to skirt a pressure ridge that might have flipped your sled like a pancake. Somewhere beneath that ice is an ancient whale sleeping in pieces. The dogs don't need to know that. You do. Historians debate how early Inuit people mastered the intricacies of dog sledding. Some suggest it dates back over 1,000 years. Others think it was adopted from neighboring cultures and refined into an art. Either way, there's no denying it. Your ancestors didn't just survive the Arctic, they choreographed it. As the sled hums beneath you, you feel it, that invisible thread connecting you to all the hunters before you. The ones who whistled, who froze, who ran, who came home. Or didn't. You whistle again. The dogs slow. You coast to a stop near a small rise of snow, barely noticeable, but you recognize the pattern. Wind carved, which means hardpack underneath. Good camping ground. You dismount, legs wobbling, and walk up the drift to scan the horizon. Nothing. Just the empty, endless blue of late morning Arctic sky. You smile. Your dogs sit waiting, eyes full of quiet devotion and mild suspicion. You whistle softly, thank you. Or maybe just, stay with me. And they do. Your boots crunch softly as you step down from the drift back toward your sled and the panting line of dogs. Their bodies steam gently in the cold breath, fogging like miniature geysers. You give another low whistle, just a hum, really telling them to settle, not sleep. You'll be moving again soon, but first a quick check on the sled's runners. You crouch beside the sled, fingers brushing over the long curved blades beneath. These aren't metal, not aluminum, not plastic. These are made from frozen time and ingenuity, carved from bones and antler bound together with sinew. You trace a seam where 2 lengths of caribou bone have been shaved and lashed together perfectly smooth to the touch, despite how crude it must sound to someone from the city. You can still remember shaping your first sled runner, sitting beside a smoky oil lamp in your uncle's snow house, scraping the bone with a piece of sharpened slate. The room had smelled like seal fat and ancient effort. Every stroke took hours, your hands blistering the sinew binding, slicing your thumbs more than once. And the sound scrape, scrape, scrape was like the Arctic's lullaby. Boring, kind of. But it was also a rite of passage. Historians agree that the earliest Inuit sleds, or kamutiait, were marvels of adaptation. Built without nails or glue, they used only what nature provided, driftwood, bone, rawhide. It's still debated whether the earliest sled designs were borrowed from Siberian cultures or developed independently by Inuit innovators. But either way, what you're standing next to now is the product of countless frozen generations whispering, "This works. Don't change it." The runners must be checked for cracks, hairline fractures from cold stress hidden, warping from last week's thaw. You run a finger along a suspicious groove and frown. A shallow nick. You'll need to heat and refreeze it later. Maybe rub in some moss to pack the gap before ice forms. It's like giving your sled a bandage. Oh, and here's the fringe part. Some elders swear that sleds remember. That if you build one right, really right, it bonds to you. You leave a bit of yourself in the bindings, and in turn, the sled pulls you home when you're lost. Is it superstition? Sure. Do you whisper thanks to it anyway when you hit smooth ice? Absolutely. You rise, stretching your knees, and give another two-tone whistle. The dogs perk up, tails flicking. You smile. They're ready. You secure your gear again, giving the ropes a good yank, and take one more glance at the runners. Shiny and slightly frosted now, they glisten in the pale sunlight. You grip the handlebar whistle short and sharp, and you're off again. The sled glides like a dream over the compact snow. The runners doing their dance, a soft hiss and a bounce as they negotiate the uneven ground. The wind whips around you, tugging at your hood and lashes, but the runners stay true. That's the beauty of bone. It flexes just enough to survive the tremble of frost heave, or an unexpected patch of ridged ice. The dogs lean into their work, and you find your rhythm. Every few minutes you whistle not to command but to reassure. It's a sound that says, "Still with you, still strong." A snow fox darts in the distance. The lead dog, Taktu, notices ears flicking, but you give a whistle tuned low and calm. He ignores the temptation and stays on course. Good boy. You think back to stories your uncle told about how old hunters used to rub seal oil on the sled runners to reduce friction. That, or even moss packed and frozen in a special mixture snow science with a splash of folklore. Apparently, someone once tried fish guts. That guy was popular with the dogs for about 5 minutes before they ate his sled. You whistle again, just to be sure your team hasn't gotten any bright ideas. Hours pass like dreams blurry around the edges, crisp in the center. The sun's low arc barely shifts, casting long blue shadows across the snow. You make a slight turn to the west, following a subtle ridge where the wind has swept the snow smooth. Then, suddenly, a bump. You glance down, frown, and whistle halt. The dogs stop immediately, sniffing and pacing. You kneel beside the sled again and brush away snow. A small chunk of one runner has chipped. Not bad, but enough to feel. You pull off a mitten and touch the edge, cold enough to burn, but still intact. You whistle softly, almost like an apology to the sled, and dig into your pack. A patch kit. Just a sliver of spare bone, some sinew, and a tiny wedge of frozen fish skin. Yeah, you heard that right. It's not just a snack. Fish skin's great for temporary repairs. It freezes solid, grips the surface, and smells just awful enough to make sure no dog chews it off again. You wrap it tight, whisper to yourself, and press it flat. Problem solved for now. As you remount the sled, you think about how every Inuit hunter becomes a part-time engineer out here. You can't call for parts. You are the repair shop, the builder, the tester, and sometimes the crash dummy. You remember your cousin Chillik, who once rebuilt an entire sled with seal ribs and a busted snowshoe. Still made it back in time for stew. Whistle. The dogs pull. The sled glides, and you glide with it, grateful again for those ancient hands that first bent bone over fire and called it a runner. The wind howls like it's got something personal against your eyebrows. You squint, hood drawn tight, breath frosting against the inside of your parka's fur trim. But you're smiling. Because this is the moment you've waited for since you were barely taller than the sled itself. Today, you pick your first dogs. You're standing at the edge of the kennel, if you can even call it that, just a ring of snow-packed shelters and tether poles all surrounded by excited chaos. Yipping, howling, tugging. Snow flies as paws dig and leap, each dog straining forward like they already know what's coming. They do know. Dogs feel that shift in the air when someone's about to make a choice. And make no mistake, this isn't about picking the fluffiest or the friendliest. This is about choosing your family, your future, and quite possibly your emergency rescue team when you inevitably do something impressively dumb on the ice. You walk the line, slowly, boots crunching over packed snow. Most of the dogs are young, barely trained, still a bit wild. That's the way you want it. You don't want someone else's team. You want dogs that will learn your voice, your scent, your unique and probably embarrassing whistle. You stop in front of a black and white female with pale eyes and a missing chunk from one ear. She tilts her head and stares like she's trying to figure out your credit score. You whistle, soft, questioning. She blinks once, then sits. Okay then. You move on, heart racing. Picking dogs isn't just emotion, it's strategy. You need a strong lead, a pair of smart swing dogs behind that, followed by your team dogs, good endurance, even temper, and finally your wheel dogs, the powerhouses right in front of the sled. Now, here's the thing. Every hunter has their method. Some go for symmetry, same size, same gait. Others say, just trust the one who bites you first. That's your leader. One of your aunties swears she picked her best dog because he peed on her boot, looked her in the eye, and trotted off like he owned the world. Historians believe Inuit dog breeding traditions date back thousands of years, with the original Kimmick pure Arctic sled dogs being selectively raised for strength, stamina, and temperament. Though some scholars argue whether early Inuit actively bred for specific traits or just let the best dogs survive naturally. It's clear that over generations, the dogs became more than just animals. They were partners, co-navigators, occasionally heated blanket substitutes. You kneel by a wiry gray pup who won't stop pawing at your knee. She's got energy, sure, but there's something else. A little mischief, maybe. You whistle low and steady. She freezes, then mimics the whistle with a huff. You snort. You cheeky little weirdo. She's in. You finally reach the end of the line eyes, catching on a thick-shouldered male with eyes like storm clouds and a neck like a refrigerator. He doesn't bark, doesn't twitch, just stares. When you whistle, he doesn't move. You whistle again, slower, more deliberate. This time, his ears flick. Not a full response, but enough. He's got that I don't listen to anyone vibe, which you admit is annoying now, but it's also exactly what you need in a lead. When blizzards hit and visibility drops to zero, you don't want a yes man up front. You want a dog who'll plant his paws and say, absolutely not. This is a crevasse. Fringe fact. Some Inuit believed that lead dogs had a kind of sixth sense that they could smell danger in the ice sense shifts in the weather, even anticipate when someone in the team was about to give up. One elder claimed his lead dog once dragged the entire sled in a huge detour to avoid a snow-covered bear carcass crawling with wolves. A little dramatic, maybe. But also, not something you want to test the hard way. You spend the next hour pairing up your selections. Gray Pup becomes your right swing dog, feisty but loyal. Ear Chunk Girl gets the wheel slot sturdy smart, and probably not too thrilled about being near the sled, but she'll manage. Storm Eyes, of course, goes in front. You'll need a real name for him soon, but right now he's just the guy who's going to ruin your shoulders when he bolts. You test their reactions to your whistle one by one. It's a mess. Some overreact, spinning in circles like you whistled "It's dinner time." Others ignore you entirely. But slowly, through trial and error, and a surprising amount of reindeer jerky, you start to shape something resembling a team. Whistling is part of it, yes, but it's also posture, energy, intent. Dogs don't need words. They read your shoulders, your breath, the way your weight shifts before you even realize you're about to move. You learn that a rising whistle means excitement, urgency. A low, drawn-out note means calm, reassurance. You also discover that if you accidentally sneeze in the middle of a whistle, it sounds like a walrus choking, and the dogs will scatter accordingly. Eventually, with the sun slanting low and your nose fully numb, you hitch them to a practice sled. Not a real run, just a test loop around the packed track near camp. You give your whistle 3 short notes this time, clipped and bright. The dogs surge forward. It's messy. The gray pup gets tangled. Storm Eyes tries to take a shortcut through someone's cooking shelter, but you're laughing. Because this is your team now. Flawed, feisty, and already trying to chew through the traces. You bring them back in a slow loop, whistling the cadence you'll drill into their bones over the coming weeks. Run, turn, slow, stop, again. By the time you unhitch them, everyone's panting, yourself included. You drop into the snow beside the sled and whistle once more. Soft, warm, grateful. Several dogs flop down beside you. Storm Eyes doesn't. He sits staring into the wind like he sees something you don't. Yeah, he's the one. You're up before the sun, which isn't saying much this far north, since the sun barely drags itself over the horizon in winter. The camp is still and silent, except for the occasional chuff from the dog line. Your breath fogs as you move between shadows, checking traces, adjusting harnesses. Today's the first true outing with your new team, and the tension is electric. Not fear, more like a slow, fizzy buildup behind your ribs. A kind of wild giddiness that makes you feel like you've forgotten something even though you've double-checked every strap knot and whistle pitch. You glance at Storm Eyes, already alert, staring at the snow with his usual 1,000-yard gaze. This is it, the start of your bond. Inuit sled dogs aren't just animals, they're a culture. For millennia, they've been bred not just for endurance or cold resistance, but for something more primal, the ability to cooperate, to learn the subtleties of human intention. And let's be honest here to decide when they're going to ignore you anyway. The whistle is your bridge. And it's not universal, by the way. Every hunter develops their own system like a signature, or a secret handshake between species. Some use high chirps, others long rising tones. One particularly legendary elder was rumored to control his dogs with a haunting 5-note trill that made nearby wolves stop and look. You're still figuring it out. Right now you've narrowed it down to 3 tones, a rising 2-note command to go, a sharp single tone to stop, and a downward 3-beat call for turns. They work mostly. Sometimes, unless someone sees a ptarmigan. Then all bets are off. You give a sharp whistle now, steady and clear. The team jerks forward, jerky and uneven at first, then smoother as they fall into sync. Snow sprays under the sled runners. The sound is crisp, like tearing paper in a library. The first kilometer is pure chaos. Gray Pup, who you've started calling Pivseek or Snowflake ironically, keeps veering right. The Wheel Dog, who you named Tugak, after noticing her impressive teeth, growls whenever someone steps too close to her tail. And Storm Eyes. He takes turns like a city bus on black ice, slow-wide and stubborn. You whistle turn. He doesn't. You whistle again, more urgently. He glances over his shoulder like you just suggested yoga class in a blizzard. Still, the team begins to settle. Muscles stretch into rhythm. Breath comes in white gusts. The line tightens into that beautiful straight pull that means no one's slacking. Your hands ease on the handlebar. You're moving. Historians say that dog-sled travel changed everything for Arctic life. Before dogs, hauling anything across the tundra was a slow, human-powered affair. With dogs, hunters could travel farther faster and safer. Families moved seasonally with less effort. Trade expanded. Legends grew legs. But dogs weren't just tools, they were clan members. Naming a dog wasn't casual. Names often described personality appearance or weird quirks. Like Amaktuk, the one who carries, or Kimuksik. Smells like dog, an affectionate insult you swear. Speaking of which, you glance down at your boots. Yup. Definitely stepped in something. Thanks, Pivseek. By mid-morning, you're kilometers from camp. The sun is barely grazing the world with pale gold, and the wind has settled into a constant push. The dogs are dialed in now. You whistle, and the sound cuts like a thread through snow and silence. They listen. There's a stretch of frozen river ahead, smooth as glass and twice as treacherous. You shift your weight slow, the team with a whistle, and a subtle brake drag. Storm Eyes takes the cue and leads them onto the ice with surprising grace. You remember stories of old hunters who used mirrors of ice to test thickness. Lay it on the snow, see if it turns dark. Still debated if that's legit science or just something someone invented to sound wise. Historians argue whether early Inuit could truly read the ice like a book, or if they just got really good at falling through and surviving it. You're hoping not to test either theory today. Halfway across, the ice gives a low groan. You freeze. So do the dogs. For a breathless moment, nothing moves. Then, instinctively, you whistle long and low. Not a command, but a reassurance. You see Storm Eyes glance back. He waits. You whisper, "Good boy," and give another gentle whistle. They move again, one paw at a time. The sled whispers over the slick surface. You don't breathe until snow crunches under the runners again. Close one. You reward the team with frozen fish bits. Yes, the good kind, not the sled repair kind, and rub ears down the line. Pivseek bites your glove. Gently. You take that as affection. You whistle rest, a fluttery tune that means chill for a bit. Dogs flop in the snow. You collapse next to the sled and stare up at the sky. There's a quiet here that presses into your bones. Not silence exactly, more like the absence of anything unnecessary. Just the dogs panting, the snow settling, your own heartbeat easing back into its regular pattern. You hum the whistle again, softer this time, like a lullaby. A few dogs twitch their ears, but stay down. You wonder if they dream in whistle commands. Probably. Hopefully not the turn now one, or you'll wake up getting dragged into a shrub. As you lie there, you realize the whistle isn't just a tool, it's a language, a conversation. One you'll keep refining with every trip. It's how you tell your dogs where to go. Yes, but more than that, it's how you tell them they're safe, they're smart, they're home. You sit up, give one final call, and the team rises as one. You smile. They're listening now. The snow falls like feathers shaken from a sky-sized pillow, thick and slow and strangely warm in the way only stillness can be. It's mid-afternoon, not that you'd know. Up here, daylight doesn't shout. It murmurs in dusky blue and pink shadows smeared across the ice like sleepy ink. You're taking your team farther today into deeper snow over gentle hills and drifted ridges away from the comfort of well-worn trails. It's not reckless. It's ritual. Because this is where the trust begins to matter. Whistling here isn't about traffic direction, it's about persuasion. And maybe just a little manipulation. You're learning that dogs like people respond better when they want to listen. So you lean into that idea, tailoring each note like you're composing music for a furry orchestra. Some Inuit elders said every dog had a favorite whistle tone. Some preferred sharp chirps. Others leaned toward long, soft calls that mimicked bird cries or the hush of the wind itself. There's even a quirky legend about a hunter who whistled in reverse, literally blew air inward, and his dogs responded with unnerving obedience. Historians aren't sure if this was brilliant innovation or just a man with sinus issues, but it makes for good storytelling. Your team, as it turns out, favors rhythm. You've noticed they move smoother when your signals are almost percussive, quick pulsing beats. So you adapt. You whistle like a drummer with cold lips tapping sound into the air. Storm Eyes, who, after much internal debate and a rather chaotic fish-snatching incident you've now named Nanook, responds with ears perked. He's tuned to your beat. The others follow his lead, and you finally feel it, the pulse of a working team. The sled hums over the crusted snow. Dogs breathe in sync. You don't just ride the rhythm, you become it. The tension in your hands fades. The slack in the trace lines vanishes. This is harmony. Then, of course, the snowdrift swallows your left runner. The sled jerks sideways. You nearly go flying, but manage a graceless hop to stay upright. Pivseek squeals, tumbles rights herself. Nanook growls low, not in anger, but in a kind of annoyed confusion like, "Really? We're doing this now." You give a short series of chirps, emergency tone. The team halts, stumbling into a loose V formation. Not perfect, but no one's dragging anyone else into a ravine, so that's a win. As you untangle harnesses and retighten straps, you hum your new rest whistle, 3 downward tones, like a sigh set to music. Dogs settle licking snow off each other, pretending they didn't just almost launch you into a spruce tree. It's moments like this that you realize how much weight those whistles carry. They're not just commands, they're reassurance reminders that you're paying attention, that you're there. Like a parent humming to a baby who doesn't yet understand the words but knows the meaning. Historically, some Inuit whistling patterns were passed down generationally. Like lullabies, they carried family lineage. One particularly odd tidbit. There's evidence that some families had non-verbal names for their dogs, unique whistle signatures that identified the dog by sound alone. No speaking, just melody. Imagine that your entire identity wrapped into a few breathy notes. You glance at Nanook, now brushing snow from his ears. His fur is thick with frost at the tips. He watches you not like a pet, but like a partner waiting to see what happens next. You offer a low, rising whistle. He stands. No hesitation. You exhale through your teeth, half in relief, half in admiration. All right, big guy. Let's try not to destroy the sled this time. The route ahead narrows an old hunting path between snow-laden birch trees. Visibility shrinks. Your whistles bounce off the trunks, echoing back like ghost signals. It's tricky. You shift to body cues, leaning subtle weight changes. The team watches, learns. By now, they know the basics. But here's the real trick. You're not just training them. They're training you too. You're learning when to shut up, when to not whistle. Because sometimes silence is the loudest cue. Dogs can sense hesitation. They hear it in your breath, your posture, your delay before calling the next command. And if you don't trust the decision, neither will they. So you hold your breath and let Nanook choose the left fork in the trail. It feels right. You trust him. 10 minutes later, you're rewarded with the glint of distant snow huts, your check-in waypoint. Nice job, lead dog. You pull the team into a slow loop and give your settle-down signal low descending whistles with extended exhale. Dogs ease into rest posture tails, curled to noses. You feed them small fish cubes, rub down their joints, and settle the sled under a drifted ridge. You lie back, staring at the pale sky. Snowflakes gather on your eyelashes. The dogs form a protective arc around the sled, some already snoring. You whistle once softly, more for yourself than them. And in the hush that follows, you start to understand. This isn't about obedience. It never was. It's about communication. You don't command your team. You converse with them. In whistles, in looks, in how you toss the first fish cube to the one who tripped, like saying, "It's okay." You sigh, tired but happy. Somewhere nearby, a ptarmigan calls. Nanook flicks an ear. You whistle a warning, short, sharp, urgent. The team stays still. Good dogs. The cold deepens, settling into your bones, like it's trying to make itself at home. You flex your fingers in your mitts, trying to keep the blood moving, even as the sled creaks with frost. The dogs stir, some stretch, some groan softly, and one predictably tries to chew on the sled's brake rope. You whistle a lazy correction, 2 short descending notes. That's your stop doing that, but I'm too cold to get up tone. The dog pauses, looks at you, and resumes gnawing. Close enough. Eventually, you rise, brushing the snow off your parka. You're traveling today toward an old hunting route, one used by your grandfather's generation, and maybe even long before that. It's not on maps, it is the map if you know the signs. Birch trees that lean just so. A ridge that catches snow like a bowl. A cluster of rocks with black lichen shaped like a bird's wing. That's the kind of navigation you're aiming for. And you're not going to get there by GPS. Dogs are restless again. Not in a bad way, just alert. You can feel it in the trace line, how it twitches like a live wire. Nanook stands tall, scanning ahead, his breath puffing rhythmically. You give a sharp whistle upward and quick. Movement. They launch. There's no trail here, no packed snow. Just endless open tundra stitched together with wind drifts and snow ridges that might hide rocks or, worse, nothing. You've got to rely on the dog's instincts now, and they've got to rely on your guidance. You switch your whistle to a steady rhythm. 2 quick notes, pause, repeat. That's your maintain course signal, and it seems to soothe them. Nanook locks in on the direction. Tugak always the muscle powers forward without question. Here's the thing, not all Inuit hunters agreed on whistle systems. In fact, some families refused to use whistles at all, insisting verbal commands were more respectful. Others swore by carved bone whistles, each tuned to a specific frequency, some allegedly inaudible to human ears. Historians still argue whether these silent whistles were real technology or just legends carved into ivory and passed down for dramatic effect. You think about carving your own whistle one day. Right now, you're just grateful your store-bought one doesn't freeze to your lips. The sled glides smoother now, the runners finding their groove in the deeper snow. You can hear the faint swish with every turn, feel the slight rise and fall as you crest unseen bumps. The sound is oddly calming, like ocean waves frozen in motion. Until suddenly, it's not. Nanook barks once sharp. He doesn't usually bark unless something's off. You whistle stop, 2 descending notes, 1 long. The team halts. You step off the sled. Snow crunches beneath you. Nanook stands, tail stiff, ears forward. You follow his gaze. There, half buried in the snow, is a rib cage. Not human, thank the ancestors. Probably caribou, old and stripped clean. But it's a stark reminder of what's out here. Wolves, weather, accidents. You give a respectful nod to the bones just in case and whistle the all-clear 1, short 1 long, rising. The team resumes. Maybe a little faster. Sometimes the wilderness teaches with teeth. Other times it teaches with silence. You prefer the silence. As the terrain shifts to rolling hills, the work gets harder. The dogs grunt with effort, paws punching through crust. You whistle encouragement, your 3-beat trill that always makes Pivsik perk up. She charges ahead like she's just had 3 cups of coffee. You love her for that. You think about the old stories, how hunters used to whistle not just for commands, but for luck. Some believed a certain whistle could charm the spirits of the wind. Others claimed they could whistle away bad weather. There's even one tale about a hunter who whistled a blizzard into staying put, trapping a polar bear long enough to escape. True. Probably not. But tonight, as clouds gather on the horizon, you hum a few of those old melodies anyway. Just in case the wind is listening. Snow begins to fall heavier. Visibility shrinks. The world closes down to a tunnel of white and breath and movement. You shorten your whistle patterns now, more frequent, more rhythmic. The dogs stay close heads, low ears, twitching for your cues. This is when the bond shows. Anyone can command a sled team on a clear day. It's when the world goes blind that trust carries you forward. You whistle a left turn just before the ridge. Nanook responds instantly, leading the team along the edge where snow packs better. You can't even see the trail, but he remembers. They all do. And you realize something quietly as snow collects on your hood. They're not just listening to your whistle, they're listening to you, your breath. Your weight shifts. The energy you carry in your body. The trust you hand them every time you step on the runners and say, "Let's go." You descend the ridge carefully, sled, whispering behind you, dogs pulling with precision. At the bottom is a wind-sheltered hollow, perfect for setting camp. You whistle the stop, then the rest. Dogs flop into the snow like it's memory foam. Pivsik immediately rolls over and tries to eat her own leg. You toss her a fish cube and she forgets about the leg entirely. You set up your lean-to, build a tiny fire from pre-split wood and dry moss. The wind howls above the ridge but doesn't touch you here. Dogs curl into themselves, their bodies creating heat bubbles in the snow. You sit beside the fire, sipping hot broth from a thermos, whistling idly. A soft melody, low and slow, almost a lullaby. One by one, the dog's ears twitch, then they still. You look up at the sky, where snow still falls, but stars peek through like shy onlookers, and you smile. Because even in the quiet, they're listening. You wake with frost on your eyelashes and the kind of silence that feels suspicious. It's the kind of silence that usually precedes something dramatic like an avalanche, or the sudden realization you forgot your sled anchor. But no, the sled's secure. The dogs are snoozing in their little thermal spirals and the world hasn't exploded. Yet, you whistle a soft rise, a check-in call. Pivseek thumps her tail once against the snow without lifting her head. Nanook opens one eye, gives a faint huff, and closes it again. All's well. Today's run is a test of nerves, mostly yours. You're cutting across a frozen inlet. The ice should be solid, should being the operative word. Your grandfather always said the ice talks. You just have to listen. Problem is, sometimes it speaks in riddles and creaks. The dogs are geared up. You're layered like a walking laundry pile. The sled is light today. Just emergency supplies and the last of the dried seal meat. You step onto the runners and give the signal a long rising whistle with a clipped end. Move out. Focus up. The dogs surge forward, snow spraying behind their paws like glitter in a snow globe. The inlet lies ahead, wide, flat, and sparkling with that suspicious too-perfect sheen. You keep your weight back, sled slightly angled, ready to jump if something cracks. You remember a story, quirky, definitely borderline ridiculous, about a hunter who trained his lead dog to whistle back when ice was unsafe. Apparently, the dog would give this weird, wheezing yelp that sounded like a rusty tea kettle. Some researchers think it was just a coincidence, but others suggest there might have been vocal mimicry involved. Historians still argue whether that dog was a canine savant or just had seasonal asthma. You kinda wish you had that dog right now. Instead, you rely on your own ears. The runners make a high, almost musical hiss against the ice. No cracks yet. You whistle steadily, low soothing notes spaced evenly. Not a command, a pulse. Like telling your team, it's okay, I've got you. Halfway across, the ice sings. It's not breaking, not yet, but it sings long and low like a wail echoing under your feet. Your heart stops. The dogs falter, unsure. Nanook looks back wide-eyed. You act fast. 2 short downward whistles, emergency slow. Then a rising chirp shift left. You guide them toward a patch of snow-covered ice near a rock outcrop. Snow means wind-blown buildup, which usually means thicker ice. The dogs respond without question. You realize you're holding your breath. Maybe they are too. You reach the far bank, intact heart still somewhere near your throat. As you dismount and check the traces, you hear the ice crack far behind you. Too far to matter now, but close enough to remind you who's boss out here. You crouch beside Nanook, scratching behind his ears. Good boy, you whisper, then give him a low rising whistle, the one you reserve just for him. His tail wags once. You swear he smiles. On firmer snow now, you press north, tracing the edge of an old glacier shelf. These are ancient lands carved by ice long before your great-great-grandparents dared build shelters here. And in this stark terrain, dog sleds were lifelines. Modern people forget this. They see sled dogs on postcards and think cute. But these animals were once essential, pulling hunters across frozen miles, hauling meat, carrying families between seasonal camps. Without them, survival wasn't just difficult. It was fantasy. And the key to all that wasn't brute strength. It was communication. There's a little-known tradition, half cultural practice, half superstition, where some Inuit hunters would sing to their teams after a successful hunt. Not a victory song exactly. More like a thank you. The lyrics were minimal, mostly vocal tones. But the melody mattered. It told the dogs we came back together. Some anthropologists speculate this ritual helped reinforce trust and pack cohesion. Others think it was more personal, a way for the hunter to process the enormity of what they'd just done. Historians still argue whether it was spiritual bonding or just a catchy way to pass time in the cold. You hum a tune, now not exactly the old song, but something close. A simple melody you've whistled before during long stretches. The dogs know it. They settle into pace. Pivseek even throws in a jaunty skip. You travel another few hours, stopping only once when a raven dive-bombs your sled. You consider whistling at it, but decide diplomacy might not work with birds that eat eyeballs. Eventually, you reach a wide snowfield, today's goal. It's flat quiet and ideal for a little exercise. For the dogs. And for your whistling game. You unhitch the sled and run the team in loops using only whistle signals to guide them. No shouting, no hand gestures. Just sound. This is where the real training happens, not in crisis but in play. You experiment with tone. High chirps for turns. Slow, trill for stop. A double puff for come to me. They start to respond with eerie accuracy. And then you try something weird. You whistle backwards. You inhale sharply through the whistle, producing a ghostly, flute-like sound. The dogs stop. All of them. You freeze. Nanook cocks his head. Pivseek sneezes. Then, shock of shocks, they trot to you. You're not sure what just happened, but apparently you've discovered your own version of the tea kettle dog myth. You sit in the snow, laughing like someone who just got away with something. The dogs pile around you, tongues lolling, tails wagging. In that moment, you understand something bigger than words. This isn't about control. It never was. It's about connection. About reading breath and body, trusting each other not to mess it up too badly. You lie back, arms out, whistle one last low fluttering tune. The wind catches it, carries it out across the tundra like a secret only your team understands. The stars are brilliant tonight, so clear, so sharp you could almost believe they're pricking holes in the sky and letting in the cold. You lie back in the snow a little longer, your breath rising in foggy bursts, dogs piled like furry boulders around you. The moment feels too big for words, but just right for a whistle. So you do 3 soft descending notes. Not a command, just company. It's funny, isn't it? How sound carries differently out here. No walls to bounce off, no engine noise or city hum to drown it out. Just the wind, your breath, and the occasional distant howl, usually not a wolf, but you never bet against that too confidently. And your whistle cuts through it all like a thread stitching you to the land. In the old days, and by old we mean any time before Wi-Fi, there was a different kind of literacy out here. Not written, not spoken, whistled, grunted, gestured, known. Passed down in sounds that didn't need translation. A whistle wasn't just a noise, it was a message, a tool, a lifeline. You remember a story from one of the elders, probably half true, but those are the best kind. He claimed some hunters could whistle coordinates by mimicking bird calls. Each call meant a direction or a landmark. If you heard the ptarmigan trill 3 times, follow the ridge east. A single raven croak followed by silence. Go home. Danger. Historians still argue whether this was real or just poetic code for don't talk too loud and scare the seals. But the idea that the land was mapped with song-like signals instead of ink and lines feels right. Especially now, lying in snow under a sky so full of stars it almost buzzes. Eventually, you roll up and brush the snow off your parka. The dogs grumble. Pivseek lets out a sigh that sounds like a teenager waking up before noon. But you whistle them to attention, and slowly, with more enthusiasm than you'd expect, they rise. It's not time to move, yet not far. But you're heading for a nearby ridge. There's something you want to try. A kind of test. The ridge isn't tall, but it's steep enough to give you a view over the frozen flats you crossed earlier. From up top, everything looks small. The sled tracks like faint scratches, the inlet like a wrinkle in silk. And you tiny, you standing with your dogs, and a whistle trying to speak a language older than your boots. You start with what you know, standard commands. Left, right, slow, ready. They respond instantly. You throw in a pattern they haven't heard much, a sequence you practiced only a few times during last summer's melt season. 2 low notes followed by a rising chirp. They hesitate. You whistle it again, a little sharper this time, and Nanook takes a step forward. Pivseek follows. One by one, the team adjusts to a new concept. Circle around and return. It's not a command they use often, but in this terrain it can be life-saving. A wrong pass on a hunting trail, a predator encounter, a thin ice crossing. You need them to know retreat is not failure. It's skill. The training takes an hour, maybe 2. You lose track. The dogs loop and reroute, bump into each other, overcorrect pause. You whistle them gently through it all, part conductor, part translator. And when they finally nail it, fluid, confident like they invented the move, you feel something warm in your chest. Not pride exactly, more like awe. At them. At you. At this whole wild, icy conversation happening without a single word. You sit with them again, passing out snacks, tiny fish cubes, dried meat slivers. The wind picks up brushing snow across your boots. You think about how different your life is from most people's. Most kids learned cursive or spelling tests. You learned how to modulate a whistle so a 100-pound animal knew whether to turn or sit or charge a seal hole without question. Most families practiced piano. Yours practiced ice safety drills and how to mimic a snowy owl with your tongue. Quirky, absolutely. But survival's always a little quirky. There's a tale less common, a bit on the fringe, about a reclusive woman who lived far up near the sea ice edge. She refused to speak ever. Her whole life she only communicated by whistling and blinking. The dogs adored her. Some say she could whistle so softly that only they could hear it, and they'd still obey. Some scholars chalk it up to exaggeration. Others point out that Inuit culture often holds space for nonverbal intelligence skills that can't be graded but can absolutely save your skin. Historians still argue whether she was a myth, a hermit, or a genius no one could understand in their own noisy way. You kind of love that she might have existed. Night deepens. You build a small fire again, warming your mitts, melting snow for tea. The dogs settle. Nanook curls close, placing his big head across your boots like a weighted blanket with opinions. You whistle a slow lullaby, an old campfire tune reshaped with breath and rhythm. The dogs listen. That's the thing, really. The magic in all of this. They don't just hear you, they listen. To your whistles, your silences, your heartbeat when it's racing from adrenaline or slowing in peace. And somewhere between your breath and theirs, between the snow's hush and the fire's crackle, you feel it again, that ancient pulse. The one that guided hunters across tundra long before phones or compasses. The one that says you're not alone. You never were. You drink your tea whistle once more into the dark, not for a command, not for training. Just to say, I'm here. And the wind, bless it, whistles back. Morning creeps in slowly, all pale gold and soft silver, like the world's been wrapped in tissue paper overnight. Your breath still fogs in the air, but the cold isn't as sharp, it's that cozy kind of crisp, where the snow crunches like styrofoam under your boots. You stretch brush frost from your eyelashes and do what every responsible musher does first thing in the morning. You whistle, good morning. It's a slow, rising note, then a gentle dip. Something between a greeting and a "please don't murder me before coffee." The dogs rouse in stages. Nanook yawns first. Pivsik gives a low grunt, and the others follow like sleepy dominoes. You toss them breakfast, nothing fancy, just high-calorie meat chunks and a few oil cubes to keep their coats slick. They eat like vacuum cleaners. You sip your lukewarm tea and run your fingers across the sled lines, checking for wear. Today's run will be long over uneven terrain, the kind of trail that doesn't exist on maps, only in memory and instinct. You'll cut across low hills, weave between frozen scrub, and, if your math's right, arrive near a known caribou path by nightfall. But first, drills. Yep, more whistling. You step a few meters from the dogs, plant your boots in the snow, and start your warm-up sequence, short bursts, sharp turns, start-stop signals. The team responds well, even enthusiastic, probably because they're catching on to the game of it, like recess for wolves. It's in this rhythm, this playful cadence, that something surprising happens. Pivsik starts echoing your whistle. Not perfectly, not even intentionally. But when you whistle a high note, she lets out a yip that mimics the pitch. When you dip low, she whines a sliding, eerie sound that almost completes your phrase. You pause. Whistle again. She answers. You laugh, a quiet, surprised sound that puffs into the cold. She tilts her head tail, wagging. Nanook gives her a look that basically says, "Show off." It's a fluke, right? A coincidence. But it gets you thinking. There's an old belief, half dismissed, half whispered, about song dogs. Not coyotes, not the scientific name. Just dogs that were extra responsive to tone. It was said they could almost feel intent through pitch. Some claimed these dogs could anticipate danger or find prey just by following a hummed tune. Modern trainers shrug it off, say dogs respond to tone like any other animal. But Inuit oral stories speak of certain dogs as companions who sang back and whose abilities went beyond instinct. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic myth, rare cases of conditioning, or just plain exaggeration. But when Pivsik chirps a note that almost matches your whistle again, you start leaning toward the believers. You whistle twice, short and low. Let's move. They snap into formation, lean into their traces, and surge forward like a single living machine. The terrain changes quickly. Snow thins into crusty, wind-blown drifts. The ground rises and dips in uneven waves. Your knees start to ache from balancing on the runners. You whistle minor adjustments, left-right, softer, slower. The dogs keep pace with precision, and you realize just how deep the training's gone. You don't have to think about commands anymore. The whistle shapes itself. A language that's becoming your second tongue. And it's not just the dogs listening. Birds overhead scatter when they hear you. A distant fox perks up, tracks your sled from a safe distance. Even the wind seems to hush between your notes like it's waiting to hear what comes next. There's a scholarly theory, one of the odder ones, that posits ancient whistling in Arctic cultures wasn't solely for dogs. It might have been a form of long-distance communication between humans too. Like smoke signals, but auditory. Light, fast, and low profile. Of course, that theory sits in a pile of maybe papers in some university archive because good luck proving it. Still, it makes a kind of intuitive sense. Out here, where visibility shifts every 10 minutes, and voices vanish in the wind sound, is survival. And whistles. They travel. By midday, you reach the spine of a ridge. From here you can see the valley where caribou sometimes cross. The snow there's less touched, only a few tracks. No herd today, but the air feels like a promise. You whistle a halt, long and flat. The dogs stop clean. You scan the horizon, squinting against the sun. No movement. Then you hear it. A whistle. Not yours. It's distant, warped by wind. But it's definitely there. 2 tones repeated. The dogs stiffen. Nanook lets out a low growl. You hold your breath. Whistle a reply, 2 different tones, yours unmistakable. No answer. Just silence. Weird, right? Could have been a bird. Could have been the wind. Could have been someone. You decide to move. No reason to linger and spook the team. You take a different route down, looping around the ridge through a tight clutch of stunted spruce. The dogs navigate expertly. You whistle them through the curves like you're painting in sound. Later, when you stop to rest, you keep replaying the whistle in your head. Was it real? Did someone else hear you first and try responding? Historians still argue whether there was once a whistling code among travelers. Not hunters and dogs, but between hunters themselves. A secret language layered under the ice winds and wolf howls. Maybe you just caught the last echo of it. As dusk settles in soft and blue, you make camp in a small hollow flanked by snowdrifts. It's quiet here, protected. The dogs curl up quickly, content. You build a small fire mostly for warmth, but partly for light. The valley is still. And then, just as you're pulling off your mittens, Pivseek whistles. It's not quite a whistle, really. More like a weird wine huff combination that arcs up and ends with a sharp exhale. You stare at her. She stares back. Nanook rolls over and groans. You chuckle and whistle the sound back to her. She answers. You go back and forth for 3 full minutes before she lies down with a huff, clearly pleased with herself. If this keeps up, you're going to have to promote her to assistant moosher. You lie back in the snow, whistle a sleepy tune, and let the stars creep back into the sky. Another day done, and the conversation just getting started. You wake to snow. Not a blizzard, not a whiteout, just the soft, steady kind that hushes everything into a dream. Each flake lands like it's tiptoeing into place. The sled is half dusted. Your boots have vanished into the fluff. The dogs. They look like a collection of enchanted snow sculptures, curled and covered, only their breath betraying the life beneath. You stretch, whistle a quiet, rising tone, your softest wake-up call. Nanook's ears twitch. Pivseek lifts her head, blinking slowly. One by one, the rest stir. No grumbling this time. Just a kind of serene obedience, like even they know shouting would ruin the mood. You pack up quickly. Movements practiced deliberate. In the Arctic routine isn't just habit, it's survival. And today you'll need it. Because visibility's down and the trails are buried. The only guide you have is your gut and your whistle. You mount the sled, shake snow from your hood, and give a low, looping signal. The dogs lean forward as one. The sled glides into the white. There's a rhythm to this kind of travel. You can't rely on your eyes. You can't trust the landscape. It's always changing, always tricking you. Dips look like hills. Hills like flat ground. What you thought was ice might be drift. And the dogs. They don't just run. They rid the land beneath their paws. You whistle adjustments more often now. Slight tone changes to compensate for snow muffle. A higher pitch cuts through better, but it can feel jarring. So you switch between tones, balancing clarity and calm. It's like conducting an orchestra of fur and muscle and intuition. And somewhere in this white blur of forward motion, you get lost in memory. You remember being young, maybe 7, when an elder showed you how to whistle with a bent strip of caribou bone. not just with your lips, but with tools. He held it up like a secret blew across it, and summoned a sound that echoed down the fjord like a whale's sigh. You tried and failed 100 times. Then one day the whistle came out just right and he nodded without a word. That whistle wasn't for dogs. It was for distance. A sound meant to travel. A signal. You wonder if anyone still uses them. You wonder if even now someone could hear you across the snow if you shaped your whistle just right. Historians still argue whether Inuit signal whistles were more ceremonial or functional. Some claim they were for rituals, dances, or weather calls. Others insist they were survival tools meant to find others in whiteout conditions like a compass made of sound. You lean into that idea today, because a few hours in the wind picks up and visibility drops to nearly zero. The dogs slow, unsure. The world disappears into a blur of white. No trees, no hills, no sky. Just snow in every direction. You whistle a stop. 3 short bursts. They obey immediately. You step off the sled, heart thumping, not out of fear exactly, but awareness. This is the kind of moment that tests more than skill. It tests presence. No panic, just breath. You reach for your emergency bone whistle, yes, the same design as that childhood lesson. Blow across it. Once, twice, 3 times. Low and long. You wait. Nothing. Again. Still nothing. But the dogs are calm. That's the first good sign. Animals sense things before you do, danger shifts presences. If they're quiet, you can be quiet too. Instead of repeating the call, you switch tactics. You whistle a slow circle back pattern. The dogs stir ears alert. They know what you're asking. You do a wide loop, letting the team guide you by feel, by buried scent, by instinct. You're not lost. Not exactly. Just lightly misplaced. And here's the funny part. While retracing your steps, you start hearing faint sounds through the snow. Not voices, not machines, whistles, not yours. A high tone, then a rapid trio. Faint, distant. Too far for a bird, too clear for random wind. You freeze. Pivseek barks once. Not warning, recognition. You reply. One long descending note. A beat. Then the whistle answers back closer. You adjust course slightly, whistling every few minutes. The snowstorm starts to ease just enough to see shadows in the blur. Low shapes. Movement. And then another sled team. They emerge like ghosts, dogs, first. Then sled. Then the musher hood up, face masked, waving. You both stop a few yards apart. They whistle. You answer. No shouting. No need. You gesture, just a simple hand sign. We're okay. They nod, return the sign. Then, with a final whistle, they vanish into the mist, going their own way. You sit for a moment after they're gone, breath fogging the air, a little stunned. That whole encounter completely silent except for whistles. And yet you knew exactly what was said. Historians still argue whether these moments are training or telepathy. If it's methodical learning or just some ancestral rhythm that slips into your blood when you've been out here long enough. You're not sure. But whatever it is, it worked. The snow lightens. The wind drops. You continue forward. Later, when the sun finally breaks through low and soft and orange, you find a flat expanse sheltered by a ridge. Perfect for rest. You unhitch the dogs, feed them well. They eat like it's their last meal on earth, tails wagging. You sit beside the sled, carving a fresh whistle from a driftwood scrap you found days ago. It's rough crude, but it hums when you blow across it. You try the same tone the other musher used. It feels right. Almost like a greeting. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe that's how strangers say hello out here. No names, just notes. Pivsik lies beside you, ears perked alert but relaxed. You whistle a lullaby. She hums it back. Okay, it's more like a groan, but you'll call it a duet. Snow falls again. Gentle this time. You don't mind. You know the way now. And if you forget, you'll just listen for the next song in the snow. The next morning, the world is clear again. It's the kind of Arctic day where the sky turns an impossible shade of blue, so pure it feels like someone scrubbed it with glacier water and polished it with silence. Your breath curls like smoke as you exhale. The snow beneath your boots crunches with that dry, airy crispness that only happens at sub-zero temperatures. You stretch, check the sled, and whistle the dogs awake. They're sluggish this morning, bundled in their own warmth, reluctant to face the bite of wind. You can't blame them. You're tempted to crawl back into your own blankets, frankly. But routine calls. So does hunger. The sled's dwindling supplies force you to shift priorities today, less wandering, more gathering. You decide to break from the usual trail and head toward a coastal inlet known for sealing holes. It's risky terrain, thin ice in places unpredictable winds, but the reward could be a fresh cache of meat. You whistle the plan. Not literally, of course, but your cadence shifts. Longer holds, slower turns. A signal to the dogs we're not sprinting today, we're stalking. And they adjust instantly. Now, here's the strange part. As you glide along the ice edge, scanning for telltale breathing holes, you begin to whistle. Not commands, not drills. Just songs. Fragments of tunes you've known for years. Bits of lullabies, old drum dances, maybe even a pop chorus or two filtered through frost and memory. You don't do it on purpose, it just happens. And the dogs. They start to follow rhythm more than signal. Your lead dog, Nanook, begins changing speed based on tempo. A slow, deep whistle slows the whole team. A fast, chirpy pattern makes them pick up their pace. You test it a few more times, deliberate changes, slight variations, and the response is consistent. It's not training anymore. It's synchronization. There's an Inuit concept called ilirijuk, not easily translated, but something like deep familiarity to the point of pre-understanding. It's the connection between hunters and their teams. The sense that you don't command your dogs so much as align with them. Some researchers chalk it up to routine, others to animal empathy. Historians still argue whether ilirijuk is cultural poetry or practical science, but you feel it now humming in your bones, carried on the wind with every note you whistle. You spot a fresh seal hole ringed with frost, slick and black at the center. Recent. Active. You park the sled a few meters back and whisper the dogs into stillness. Not a literal whisper, just a breathy whistle downward sliding the auditory version of shh. The dogs lower themselves, not quite lying down, but close enough to vanish into the white. No barking, no shifting, just alert stillness. You crouch, harpoon in hand, and wait. The cold burrows into your joints like termites, but you don't flinch. Your breath slows. Your heart matches it. You whistle so softly, it's almost thought not sound. It's a tone you learned from an old hunter. Supposedly, it mimics the high pitch of air escaping a surfacing seal's nostrils. A lure, not a command. A guess, really. Fringe knowledge passed in the dark. No scientist ever proved its effectiveness. But 20 minutes later, a shadow stirs beneath the hole. The seal breaches nostrils, flaring. The harpoon flies. You drag the seal onto the ice heart, pounding not just from exertion, but awe. The dogs don't lunge or bark. They stay put, eyes trained on you, waiting. Only when you give the double whistle short, quick bursts do they rise and approach. You let them sniff the catch, then reward them with small pieces. The rest you wrap, tie down, and pack for the sled. There's an almost ceremonial quality to it all. The whistle, the wait, the silence, the reward. It feels ancient and instinctual, like you've stepped into a ritual that's been happening for centuries. Because you have. Whistling to control a dogsled team is practical, yes. But in these moments it becomes spiritual. A connection not just to your animals, but to the people before you. The ones who crossed this same ice with similar tools, similar fears, and similar hopes. You begin the return journey with full packs and a lighter heart. The dogs move effortlessly, their energy renewed by food and success. You whistle a slow beat not for control, but celebration. The dogs wag their tails as they run as if dancing to your tune. And here's a fun fringe detail for you. Some 19th century explorers, British, mostly clueless, claimed Inuit dogs could read music. They described dog teams reacting to harmonica tunes played by handlers. Did they really read it? Probably not. But tone and tempo clearly mattered even to outsiders. One diary from a Hudson's Bay trapper talks about how whistling greensleeves would calm an agitated team. Historians mostly roll their eyes at this anecdote, but the overlap with what you're experiencing now is hard to ignore. You whistle an ascending run of notes. The sled turns left around a drift. No command, just music. As you crest a small rise, the inlet spreads behind you like a frozen painting seal hole still visible, sunlight catching on the ice. The dogs slow without being told, almost reverently. You take one last look, then whistle forward. The sled slices the snow like a pen through paper. You ride into the golden hour, into a silence only broken by breath, paw, and tone. And somewhere in the fading light, you realize the truth. You're not just guiding these dogs, you're composing with them. Each whistle a phrase, each turn a stanza, each run a song. The next few days slip by like whispers on ice. You and the dogs move together with a kind of silent efficiency that feels earned, not given. Each morning a brief series of notes pulls them from slumber. Each night a low, winding tune eases them into stillness. You whistle, not because you have to, but because at this point not whistling would feel like trying to breathe underwater. The bond has deepened, but today it's about to be tested. Because now you're heading inland, away from the familiar crunch of sea ice and into the less forgiving terrain of the tundra ridges. The snow here is deceptive, piled in gentle mounds over jagged ground. Hidden rocks, frozen tussocks, wind-worn dips that can throw a sled sideways if you're not paying attention. Your lead dog, Nanook, isn't thrilled. He lifts his head and growls softly at the ridgeline ahead. Not fear, exactly, just concern. Like a seasoned guide who's seen one too many tourists fall into a crevasse. You whistle an all-good tone, 3 short pulses followed by a rising note. He narrows his eyes, then moves forward. Slowly, your speed drops to a crawl. This is where whistling becomes something else entirely. It's not just communication, it's reassurance. You whistle to say, I see you. I feel this too. We're okay. And here's something odd, fringe if you will. Some Inuit elders once claimed that whistling in difficult terrain didn't just help dogs. It helped the land understand your presence. The idea being that sound made you known. Not in a mystical, talking to spirits way, though some might argue that too, but in a way that asserted your position in the environment. Like sonar, or polite knocking. Historians still argue whether this belief was metaphor or function. whether it was spiritual appeasement or just a clever tactic to avoid surprise encounters with bears' cliffs or worse. But today you find yourself believing it, because halfway through a particularly tricky pass you hear a sound you haven't heard in days. A distant howl. Not dog, wolf. It's far off but unmistakable. You pause, body going rigid. The dogs freeze, ears swiveling like radar dishes. You give a low, steady whistle, calm, slow grounding. The kind that says, don't panic, just listen. The dogs relax slightly, but their eyes stay sharp focused on the tree line. Wolves and sled dogs. It's complicated. Some sled teams descend from wolf-dog interbreeding centuries ago. Others despise the scent of wolves. Some will bolt, others will fight. It depends on the team, the day, and the dog's mood. You don't take chances. You whistle a stay-tight command, a low two-tone slide followed by a chirp. They bunch up, forming a dense alert unit. Nanook stands tall at the front tail, stiff. He's not scared. He's ready. You dismount and walk ahead, scanning the tree line. Nothing moves. You whistle again, this time an old pattern. The kind used not for dogs, but for other hunters. A territorial tone. A "we're here, we're not prey" message. It's a gamble. But better to announce yourself than sneak through unmarked. Minutes pass. The forest holds its breath. Then another howl, fainter this time. Farther. You exhale tension, slipping out like steam. The dogs sense it, and relax, shifting weight and wagging tails cautiously. You nod, remount, and give a move on whistle. The sled glides forward again. As the day stretches into evening, you find yourself reflecting on that strange whistle exchange. Not between you and dogs, but between you and whatever listened out there. You remember a story your grandfather told about how hunters used to whistle not to dogs or people, but to the land itself. To ask for safe passage. To request mercy from weather. Not commands, not demands, just offerings of sound. It sounded silly when you were 12. Now, not so much. Especially when a few hours later the wind changes, softens. The ridges even out. The terrain smooths, like someone cleared a path just for you. Coincidence, maybe. But you whistle a thank you anyway. The camp you set that night is sheltered quiet. The dogs curl together content. You heat seal meat over a small stove and whistle softly as you eat, not any tune in particular, just whatever your breath wants to say. And somewhere in the distance, something whistles back. It's high, faint, wind-wrapped. Could be a bird. Could be the land. Could be your imagination having a field day. You don't care. You whistle again. It echoes. You smile. You don't feel alone, not really. Here's another quirky little tidbit. Some Inuit hunters swore that certain whistled pitches would attract or repel different animals. There's an old tale about a man who whistled a specific scale to keep polar bears at bay. Another insisted he once whistled a goose down from the sky. Most folks laugh at those stories, but you wonder who tested that first. Who thought to whistle and see what answered? You lie back, staring up at the stars. They're brutal tonight. Sharp, brilliant, frozen diamonds against black velvet. You try whistling constellations. Orion gets a 3-tone melody. Ursa Major gets a slow, looping tune. You're not sure why, but it feels right. The dogs twitch in their sleep. The sled creaks softly in the cold. And you whistle one last tune for the night, not for control, not for safety, just because it feels like the right thing to do. You wake to silence so thick it hums. Even the dogs haven't stirred yet. No panting, no shifting, not even the rustle of fur against fur. Just a blanket of stillness, like the Arctic itself has hit pause. You hold your breath, unsure whether to disturb it. Then, very faintly, a thump. Not threatening. Just curious. You slip out of your sleeping bag and peek over the sled. They are not 20 feet away. A ptarmigan bobs through the snow, plump feathered feet leaving neat little dents. It pauses, tilts its head, and stares right at you. You whistle. Not a command, not a warning. Just a low rising note, pure curiosity in sonic form. The ptarmigan fluffs up, emits a tiny squawk, and hops away. You shake your head and smile. Of course, that didn't work. But wouldn't it be wild if it had you whistle again, this time for the dogs? A bright chirp. The okay, let's move call. They rouse instantly. Nanook stretches and gives a theatrical yawn as if to say, "We doing this again?" Yep, you're doing this again. Today, you head toward a cluster of snow-draped boulders known locally as the Drummers. Legend says the rocks echo back any sound, especially whistling. The area's got a kind of spooky reputation, too. Travelers speak of voices in the wind of ghost dogs trailing silently behind teams. You chalk that up to isolation plus wind physics. Mostly, but you're also deeply intrigued. And, if you're being honest, a little nervous. The sled cuts across the frozen plain with ease, the team moving like they've already memorized the route. You whistle a pacing song, something mid-tempo to keep energy levels even. The dogs respond in kind, adjusting their stride to match the beat. Around midday, the boulders come into view, rising from the snow like ancient sentinels, their gray shapes mottled with frost and old lichen. You stop the sled and take a long look. No movement, no sound, just rock. You walk ahead alone, whistling softly, then ping, an echo. Clear, crisp, delayed. You grin. That's a rare thing in the Arctic, a true ringing echo. Most of the time, sound is swallowed by the snow. Here, the acoustics bounce it back like a mirror. You whistle again, an old pattern your uncle used to use when he was lost. A kind of sonic breadcrumb trail. Left, right, high, low. The boulders answer each note eerily perfect. Nanook growls behind you. Not aggressive, just alert. You spin, scanning for movement. Nothing. But you feel it now, pressure. Like you've just walked into a room someone else already occupies. Historians still argue whether the Drummers were ritual spaces or just weird geology. Some oral traditions say this is where hunters came to speak to ancestors, whistling names, waiting for responses. Skeptics call it echo chamber wishful thinking. But as you stand between the stones, the wind suddenly shifts, and you hear a reply. Not your echo. Not quite. It's off by a beat, slightly lower. Definitely not yours. You go still. Nanook bristles. You whistle again, testing. Same result. A pause, then a reply. One note, faint and low. There's no one here. You're sure of it. And yet, the sound continues. You back away slowly, hands loose, not panicking. The last thing you want is to freak out and send that fear down the leash line. The dogs stay in place, staring toward the rocks. Not anxious, not barking, just listening. You give a calming whistle. 2 low notes. 1 held long. They relax. You make camp well away from the boulders that night. Still close enough to watch them in the fading light, though. Because let's be real, you're not just scared. You're fascinated. You sit by the fire, a slab of seal meat warming in the pan, and you whistle tunes you haven't used in years. Old radio jingles. That theme from the sci-fi show with the weird robots. Even the ice cream truck song from summers that now feel like they belonged to someone else. The boulders never echo those back. Just silence. and it occurs to you maybe the reply wasn't meant to mimic. Maybe it was just replying. A rock song, if you will. Some researchers, usually the fringe kind, believe Inuit hunters used echo spots like this for training young dogs, teaching them to respond to sounds from various angles, or even to learn pitch differences based on terrain reflection. Sounds made smarter. You whistle once more, then let it go. Enough mystery for one night. The dogs curl up tight. You wrap your parka closer. The fire hisses softly, and in the background, a single note drifts back from the boulders. Low, final. Like the end of a conversation you didn't realize you'd started. You sleep soundly that night. Not because the boulders stopped echoing, but because you've accepted that out here not every whistle needs to make sense. Some just need to be heard. The next morning, something odd happens. You whistle for the dogs, and two of them are already standing, staring at you, waiting. It's not the reaction that's odd, it's the timing. You hadn't even finished the call. It's like they anticipated it, as if your body tensed slightly or your breath changed in a way they picked up on before the sound ever left your lips. Spooky, yes, but also amazing, because now you're starting to wonder, is it really the whistle? Or is it everything around the whistle? The rhythm, the tension in your body, the breath before the tone. Historians still argue whether Inuit sled dogs responded more to tone and breath work than to actual pitch. Some researchers even speculate that whistling acted as a ritual primer, something that cued not just dogs, but hunters themselves into a working mindset. A pre-game whistle, not unlike a boxer's shuffle or a musician's warm-up. And today, as you break camp, you feel it. That sense of tuning in. You're not just whistling anymore. You're preparing. Today's stretch is long and weirdly flat. The kind of terrain where the horizon doesn't change for hours. No peaks, no trees, not even a ridge to aim for. Just a wide white blur that makes you feel like you're floating. The dogs hate this kind of stretch. They get bored. Fast. So you whistle. Rhythm. Not commands, not direction. Just beats. Percussive little chirps spaced out like a drummer keeping time. You change the pattern every half hour to keep it fresh. And they respond not with speed, but with steadiness. It works. Kind of like a metronome for pause. Every so often you throw in a flourish. A little trill at the end, just for fun. The dogs twitch their ears like, really, but then keep going. You chuckle. Gotta keep it spicy, you mutter. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some Inuit hunters used to whistle sing during long hauls, improvised melodies that morphed based on how the sled was performing. If the sled was gliding well, the song became smoother. If it started to drag, the rhythm would get choppy. Some believe this wasn't just for entertainment, it was a diagnostic tool. A way to monitor the journey through sound like a living performance of the road ahead. You try it now. A smooth, descending melody for smooth gliding. A rising double chirp when things get sticky. It's silly, and it's kind of genius. Because halfway through the day, you catch yourself correcting course based on the tone you just whistled. You're listening to yourself more clearly than usual. By early evening, you reach a frozen lake. The wind skates across its surface like a blade, high-pitched and sharp. The dogs slow at the edge, uncertain. You whistle a confident tone, bold and upward. They pause, then proceed. The sled hums on the ice smoother than expected. And then, a crack. Just a hairline one. No danger, not yet. But that sound, the snap of expanding lake ice, sends a tremor through your gut. You call the dogs off the ice with a quick staccato whistle. They respond instantly, banking hard for the edge. You breathe easier once you're on snow again. But it makes you think. You've trained your whistle muscles, sure. But have you trained your ears just as much, because whistling isn't just outbound. It's listening too. And not just to echoes or replies. To everything. To the way wind responds. To how snow absorbs sound. To the kind of crunch your sled runners make when the terrain shifts. One hunter once said, "A silent trail is the loudest danger." You whistle softly, nothing in particular, and listen. The tone vanishes into the trees. No bounce, no echo. Dead silence. You pause. Take a step. The snow is thick here, soft, absorbing. The kind of snow that hides crevasses. You back up slowly, whistling with more force. Still, nothing returns. It's not haunted. It's just dangerous. You whistle the halt and reassess signal. Nanook stops instantly. You try a different path east of the frozen lake hugging the ridgeline. You whistle again. This time, the sound carries. Not far, but enough. It's a sonic breadcrumb trail once again. But now you understand it differently. You're not just guiding your team, you're testing the world. And the world in turn is answering. Night falls fast in this part of the journey. Your campfire flickers against low snowbanks, the only warm color in a sea of gray and blue. You whistle softly as you set out rations, a little tune your mother used to hum when folding laundry. Comfort in audio form. The dogs settle quickly. No barks, just ears twitching and tails curling tighter. It's been a long day, but a good one. The kind of day that makes you feel more tool than person, an extension of your sled, your dogs, the snow. And the whistle. It's not just a technique anymore. It's a language. One without grammar but with rhythm. One without syntax but with trust. And as you drift off to sleep under a sky so full of stars it looks pixelated, you remember something another hunter once said. The land may not speak, but it listens. And if you whistle kindly, sometimes it hums back. Tonight the land is humming. It's the kind of cold that makes your eyelashes clump. You exhale, and your breath curls up like a tiny ghost, then vanishes. The sled runners squeal faintly beneath you. Dry ice shrieks that cut the silence. The dogs don't seem to mind, but they glance back often today, checking in more than usual. They're picking up on something. And honestly, so are you. The sky's too clear. The wind's too still. You know what that means. A blizzard's probably sneaking in from behind a ridge somewhere, lying low until it explodes across your path like a curtain, drop in reverse. You pick up the pace. And, as always, your whistle leads. Today's tone is sharper, more clipped. Not angry, just urgent. You're not panicking, but you are managing. One short note every few seconds. Reassurance. Focus. The dogs stretch into it like rubber bands. They know what this rhythm means. Time to work, no fooling around. Inuit hunters were masters of this musical precision. A slight change in pitch or tempo could mean everything from veer left to ditch the sled and save yourselves. It's not just practical, it's elegant, like Morse code, but way cooler and with fur. And now, as the light begins to flatten, that eerie gray-yellow glow that usually precedes a whiteout appears. You whistle the wind check pattern. 2 quick bursts, then a pause, then a long note. Not because it wards off weather, you're not that optimistic, but because it focuses the dogs, pulls them into a pattern of attention. It's their grounding thread. But today, something else happens. Your own heartbeat syncs with it. Seriously, you feel your pulse lining up to the cadence of your own whistling. Is that normal? Historians still argue whether Inuit whistling methods tapped into human biological rhythms, heartbeats, breathing cycles, even REM patterns. One fringe theory suggests that prolonged whistle signaling might have mildly hypnotic effects, not just on dogs, but on the humans giving the commands, like auto-hypnosis by breath and tone. You're skeptical, but not totally, because now you're in flow state. Everything sharpens. You know exactly when the sled will hit a bump before it does. You anticipate the dog's movements like you're living a second ahead of real time. Even the snow seems to cooperate. Less resistance, more glide. Then the blizzard hits, not with a scream, but a swallow. Everything goes white and quiet. Sound dulls like you're underwater. You blow your emergency whistle 2 sharp notes and a falling third. The dogs freeze. Good. Visibility drops to about an arm's length. You throw on your snow goggles, not that they help much, but it's the routine that matters. You whistle again, this time the hold position tone. The dogs drop into crouches, forming a furry windbreak around the sled. This is the part where you wait. 20 minutes. 2 hours. No way to tell, so you whistle. Not commands, just music. You hum with your mouth closed and shape the notes with pursed lips, letting the wind carry little fragments out into the blur. The sound doesn't travel far, but it does dance. And in that white vacuum, the dogs relax. Your lead dog even closes his eyes. Back in the day, some hunters used lullaby whistles to calm their teams during storms. Simple, looping tunes often built around local bird song or seal grunts, which weirdly have a rhythm to them if you listen long enough. These melodies had no words, but they meant safety. You try one now. Nothing fancy, just a 4-note loop with a slight tilt at the end like a question mark falling asleep. The dogs start to breathe in sync, and you swear for a moment that the blizzard itself pulses with you. You stay like that for a long time. No movement, just breath and tone, locked into this surreal sonic bubble where nothing exists but your exhale and the slow, slow drift of snow. Eventually, the light shifts. Not brighter, but different. The kind of shift that means the worst has passed. You whistle the rise, slowly tone. It's a tentative sound, soft but upward. An invitation. The dogs lift, stretch, shake the snow from their coats. Nanook leads the charge forward like the storm never happened. You follow, and suddenly you're through it. Just like that. Clear air, visible sky, terrain you recognize. The dogs shake out the tension with quick body flicks the way humans might roll their shoulders after a long meeting. You whistle thanks. Yeah, that's a thing. A thank you whistle. Old school hunters swore by it. Not as a trick or a reward, but as a truth. Just a little, I see you. Some elders even believed the dogs could whistle back in their own way through howls, tail flicks, even coordinated breathing patterns. You reach the edge of a ridge and pause to take in the view. The landscape rolls out like cake frosting, smooth, glinting, soft enough to hide danger. You whistle a low, slow melody. Not for any reason. Just because it feels like the right note for this moment. And in return, the wind whistles back, high, thin, ghostly. You laugh. Show off, you mutter to no one. The journey continues, but something in you has shifted. You're no longer using whistles to guide your team through the Arctic. You're using them to understand it. And that's a different skill entirely. The next morning, your whistle comes before you even wake. Half asleep, still curled in your blanket of caribou hides, you hear it in your dream 3 notes, rising, falling, then rising again. It pulls you gently awake, like someone tugging the corner of your consciousness with mittened fingers. When your eyes open, you realize it wasn't from you. Nanook is standing over you, tail wagging gently, letting out the softest breathy huff that could be mistaken for a whistle if you were still half asleep. Which you are. You whistle back without thinking. Just a little loop the hello there tune. He bobs his head once satisfied. You both stretch. Today is bright and weirdly warm by Arctic standards, which still means you could freeze solid if you stop moving for 3 minutes. The kind of day that tricks you into underestimating it. As you pack up camp, your breath fogs less than usual. The snow has that wet, squeaky sound when you step. It's a transition day, cold enough to stay frozen, but just barely. And those days are tricky, because now the dogs are restless again. Not anxious, just chatty. They whine. They bark. They toss little insults at each other in dog language. One starts digging for no reason, uncovering a rock like it's treasure. You whistle the settle-down melody. Smooth, downward calming. It kind of works. Sort of. Today's route weaves through coastal ice, beautiful but treacherous. You can hear the ocean beneath it if you listen hard enough. Or maybe that's just your nerves talking. Either way, your whistle becomes your leash. And this leash is made of air. One long tone to center them. 2 quick pulses to steer right. A falling 5th to slow. It's almost musical now, like you're scoring your own journey 1 note at a time. You've started experimenting too. Not every whistle is traditional. Some are just yours. Like the sharp chirp hum you've been using to catch Nanook's attention when he gets squirrely. It's not part of any ancient code, but it works. Which, let's be honest, is the whole point. Historians still argue whether whistle training was standardized among Inuit communities, or passed down like family recipes, different tones for different clans shaped by individual dialects, hunting styles, and personalities. Some suggest that even within a single family, whistles would vary slightly between parent and child mentor and apprentice. A musical signature of sorts. You like that idea. Because what you're building with these dogs, it feels personal. By midday, you hit a stretch of pressure ridges, giant slabs of ice piled like toppled dominoes by the sea's slow, stubborn shrug. The sled can't pass through, so you whistle the circle around code and start scouting for a detour. One ridge seems climbable, so you unhook the dogs, lead them up on foot. It's slick, hard as glass, and twice as moody. You slip, fall on your butt. One of the dogs snickers. You're almost sure of it. You laugh, I leash you, you mutter, brushing snow off your dignity. The view from the top is worth it, though. Beyond the ridges, you see open sea ice, flat, shimmering under a sky so pale blue it almost looks white. You whistle a descending scale just to hear it ripple over the expanse. It doesn't bounce back. Instead, it disappears absorbed. You pause. Whistle again. Same thing. No echo. Weird. Quirky tidbit time some Inuit whistlers swore that open sea ice ate certain tones. The old explanation, spirits in the ice were greedy for sound, especially sounds made with breath. You laugh at that, but not completely. It does feel like your whistle has been swallowed. The dogs don't seem to care. They've started nosing each other, tails wagging. You whistle the focus up, call an upbeat 3-note flick. And something unexpected happens. They harmonize. Not exactly in pitch, of course, but in motion. All at once they snap forward, perfectly spaced, moving like dancers who just remembered the choreography. You don't question it. You just follow. Later that night, around a small driftwood fire, you try a new whistle. you're not sure where it came from. A pattern of long and short chirps almost like Morse code, but with more personality. The dogs cock their heads. Nanook gives a low appreciative huff. You repeat it. Then try again, slightly different. A few tail wags. One of them yawns in response, wide and slow. You get the feeling they're rating your performance, giving you notes like, more pizzazz next time. You chuckle. You guys are harsh critics. And maybe it's the firelight or the day's softness, but you start thinking about how far you've come. From fumbling mouth bursts to full conversations with your sled team. From mimicry to mastery. Now, when you whistle, it's not just a command. It's an offering. A way of saying, here I am. I'm listening. Are you with me? And they always answer, even if it's just with a glance, a flicked ear, or the rhythm of their paws on snow. You settle into your sleeping furs, whistling a half-tune to yourself as the fire pops softly. In the distance, a snow owl calls once high and haunting. You mimic it softly, just for fun. And a moment later, it answers. That's new. Tomorrow's going to be another long haul, but you don't dread it. You've got your dogs, your sled, and your breath. And with those three things, you're never really alone. You close your eyes and think of all the stories told only in whistle. Songs no one will ever write down. Conversations in tones and tempo. Stories lost on the wind and found again one note at a time. You wake to a whistle that isn't yours. Not a dream this time. Not Nanook either. This is sharper, more distant, more human. You jolt upright eyes, still bleary, and scan the horizon. Nothing but a faint wind brushing snow over the frozen ridges. Your team is already standing, ears pricked toward the sound. You whistle low just once. Hold. They obey, freezing in place like statues. You pull out your spyglass and scan again. Still nothing. But the whistle comes again, 3 rising notes, clipped and urgent. That's a hunting signal. You don't recognize the pattern, but it's definitely not random. And that means one thing: another human out here. Another sled team. You haven't seen anyone in over a week. This far out, that's not unusual. But it is strange for someone to whistle so openly in this kind of country, especially without visual contact. You whistle back, neutral tone, one long note, no commands in it. An acknowledgement. Like a verbal, I hear you. Who's there? No answer. The dogs are shifting now, uncertain. You give them a gentle correction whistle, just a soft, upward loop that says, we're okay. This kind of moment used to rattle you, but not anymore. Because you know the rules now. You know how the Inuit used whistle communication not just for their dogs, but for each other. Out on the ice, when distances grew too vast for shouts and line of sight disappeared behind ridges and snowdrifts, whistling was the perfect answer. Crisp, carryable, and coded. Whistles were how you signaled a successful hunt, how you warned of cracks in the ice, how you called for help without giving your position away to everything else out there, like, say, a very hungry polar bear. Or, worse, another hunter with worse intentions. Historians still argue whether whistle dialects among Inuit communities were deliberately made cryptic to outsiders like icebound spy codes. Some even suggest that neighboring clans used the same whistle tones for completely different commands just to maintain local control over meaning. A kind of Arctic encryption. You kind of admire that. Anyway, you're not too worried. Your dogs aren't panicked and the wind's on your side. So you eat a quick meal, frozen seal slices and hard bread as chewy as roofing shingles, and prep the sled. Midway through the harnessing, the whistle comes again. Different this time. 2 descending notes, then silence. recognition. It hits you like a surprise handshake. That's a whistle you learned from an elder weeks ago. A tone passed down from the north coast, friendly, not urgent. Like a nod across a fire. You whistle back, matching the pitch as best you can. 5 minutes later, you spot him. Tiny figure on the edge of the ridge parka, billowing like a flag. His sled team is resting just beyond the crest, mostly hidden except for one twitching tail. He doesn't wave. He whistles. Just one soft, rising note. Like steam curling from a cup of tea. You respond in kind. This is how conversations start out here. It takes 20 more minutes before you are face-to-face sharing tea and dry meat beside your sleds with the dogs, forming a lopsided, furry semicircle. His name is Atka, and he's been hunting seal 3 days west of here. Says he's heading back to his village now, but took a long way around to avoid thin ice. Smart. You talk in low tones, but now and then you still whistle. Out of habit, for emphasis, to correct a dog, or to test each other. Turns out Atka knows a whistle you've never heard, a 4-note trill that makes your team sit down instantly, like someone flipped their off switch. You laugh. All right, now that's just showing off. He grins, teeth flashing behind his beard. Passed down from my grandfather. Works better than words. That's true. Words freeze and fall out of the air here. Whistles slice right through. You trade tones like other people trade stories. And that's when you realize this isn't just communication. It's culture. A living, breathing language made of breath and snow and sound. One that can't be written down, can't be fully explained. It has to be felt, rehearsed, played with, like a song that keeps rewriting itself. Atka shows you a pattern he uses for hunting alone, a warning call to keep polar bears from sneaking up. It's not loud, but it's sharp, unpleasant even to you. Supposedly, it mimics a distressed fox. Just annoying enough to make curious predators think twice. Quirky, sure, but clever. You wonder how many whistles are still out there, lost with the hunters who carried them, still drifting in the wind, waiting to be remembered. Eventually, you both go your separate ways. You whistle farewell, your tone now second nature. He answers with his grandfather's trill, and then the snow absorbs him. You move on, warmed not by the fire, but by the strange comfort of contact. That someone else out here carries the same breath language, that you're not the last voice in a silent sea. As you travel through the afternoon light, you whistle little tunes just to keep your pace. Not commands, not signals, just little phrases like footprints you leave in sound. And the dogs hum along with their paws. You think back to something Atka said, we don't train them to understand whistles. We train ourselves to whistle in their language. Huh? You like that? As the sky shifts into pink and the clouds begin to roll in again, you whistle one more time, not to say anything. Just to hear the echo. It doesn't come back. But the dogs do. They turn eyes, bright tails up, and push forward. Yeah, you've still got a long way to go. But you're getting there. The wind has teeth tonight. It hisses between the folds of your hood, curls beneath your collar, like it's looking for skin to bite. The kind of wind that laughs when you try to whistle, tossing your notes off, coarse like it's swatting flies. You try again, 2 rising tones meant to slow the team. They hear you, but the wind distorts it, makes it sound unsure. Half a command, half a question. Still, they respond. Because by now they don't just hear your whistles, they know them. They read the breath behind them, the rhythm of your lungs, the intent in your pause before the tone even forms. You're not just sending instructions anymore. you're holding conversations. The team veers left gracefully without breaking stride. You reward them with a light, playful trill, your version of a good job pat on the head. Nanook's tail sweeps the air like a metronome. Tonight, you're traveling by moonlight. The sun hasn't been seen in days, buried behind snowstorms and clouds that stretch like old parchment across the sky. But the moon, cold, unblinking, is with you now. A pale disk that casts long shadows and makes every snowbank a ghost waiting to stand up and say, "Boo." Still, it's beautiful. Everything glows silver. Your breath looks like ink and water. The sled runners hiss softly beneath you, gliding like whispers across the crusted snow. Somewhere behind you a fox yips once sharp and close. The dogs stiffen. You counter with a steady whistle, long, low grounding. Like a musical hand on their shoulders. They ease. You whistle again, this time in a pattern from a few nights ago. A call and response rhythm you've been testing. Whistle, pause, double tap, whistle. At first, it was just for fun. Now, the dogs finish it for you. Whistle, pause, woof, whine, woof. Perfect. Historians still argue whether Inuit sled dogs responded better to whistles or vocal commands in storm conditions. Some oral accounts suggest dogs could distinguish their owner's whistle even in whiteout winds when voices became useless. Others believe the dogs followed body language just as much as sound. You think, maybe it's both. Because tonight, in the middle of this glowing silver silence, you feel them reading you. Responding not only to the notes you send, but the emotion behind them. And there is emotion. You're not scared exactly. But you are alert, because this is polar bear country. And no, not the cute kind that Coca-Cola wants you to think about. These bears are massive, curious, clever. They don't just bumble around like furry snowmen they track. They learn. And sometimes they follow for miles invisible against the white until it's too late. So you whistle often. Not to signal the team, but to announce yourself. Make a sound. Any sound. Something that says, "I am not a seal. I am not food." Move along, you snowy land shark. You learned this from an elder, too. He called it air writing, leaving auditory footprints so the ice knows where you've been. You like that idea. The wind dies down slightly enough for a few clean whistles. You test a new call one with an uneven rhythm, almost like a skipped heartbeat, just to see how the dogs react. They slow a bit. Good. You keep it in your pocket, a tool for later. Suddenly, Nanook stops cold. Ears forward. One paw lifted. You stop too. No whistle. Just silence. Then crack. The ice moans beneath your sled. Not a full break, but enough to make your spine stiffen like reindeer jerky. The dogs don't panic. They look at you waiting. You whistle 5 staccato notes, high to low. Danger. Turn. Now. They obey instantly. You steer them wide, skirting the groan in the earth, keeping your breath slow. Calm, because panic lives in the lungs, and panic infects the whistle. One bad note and this team would bolt, or worse, freeze. Literally. You keep the commands tight, crisp, and soon you're clear. The ice is solid again, singing no more of hidden rivers below. You exhale slowly. As a reward, you whistle a lullaby melody, a soft loop borrowed from a game you played as a kid. It doesn't mean anything to the dogs, but the tone relaxes them. It relaxes you too. Quirky fact, some Inuit hunters reportedly used lullabies as travel tunes, humming or whistling familiar songs to their dogs as a way of keeping pace and calming nerves during dangerous crossings. It wasn't just practical, It was human, comforting, even musical. You hum now, just under your breath. Something old, maybe, from childhood. The melody wobbles with each jostle of the sled. You're tired, not from distance, from listening so much, watching, reading, translating. Whistle language is wonderful, but it takes energy. And yet, when the team settles down for the night, curling in tight loops around each other like furry cinnamon rolls, you don't stop. You whistle once more. Just a short phrase. They sigh, content, like a good night back. As you crawl into your furs, moonlight casting soft patterns across the tent's walls, you imagine someone 100 years from now standing in this same spot, trying to whistle the same calls. Maybe they will. Maybe they'll make new ones. Because whistle language, like all language, evolves. You just hope they listen first, that they earn it, the way you did. The snow is falling sideways today. It doesn't drift or flutter. It slashes like little shards of frozen rice flung from a celestial blender. Visibility somewhere between barely and nope. You squint and tug your hood tighter until the fur tickles your eyelashes. The dogs, bless them, don't care. They move like they were born for this. Which, well, they were. Your feet thump with every step, the snow refusing to pack properly. Every few strides your sled bumps and jitters catching on hidden ridges or soft banks. You keep your balance. You whistle. A tight 3-note command: push forward, stay together. It carries somehow. They respond. And for a moment you feel invincible. Like a conductor at the front of a living orchestra, one made of fur and frost and history. You glance behind. No tracks. The snow has already erased them. But that's okay. You've learned to stop needing proof you were here. Your whistles are enough. As you press on, you think about the things people leave behind in sound. The Inuit didn't just use whistles to command, they used them to remember. Some tones were named after ancestors, others after animals' wind patterns or even jokes. There are reports, fringe but fascinating, that some families had whistles used solely during storytelling, passed from grandparent to child like heirlooms. Whistle lores. Your own tone, your go-to call to stop the team, comes from one of those stories. You didn't invent it. You borrowed it. From a tale about a hunter who tricked a bear into dancing by whistling a rhythm it couldn't resist. Completely ridiculous. Probably never happened. But you like it. And so do the dogs. Today, though, the rhythm is survival. The wind is sharpening again. Every whistle you send gets punched sideways, knocked into silence. You try to shield your mouth with your glove, turning slightly to carve a tunnel through the gale. It helps. Barely. You whistle again. A simple mid-tone note and all clear. Just to keep their confidence up. Some historians still debate whether whistling retained its importance once radios arrived in the Arctic during the mid-20th century. One school argues the radio replaced it. The other insists whistles remained crucial. Faster, lighter, immune to batteries, and much less likely to freeze in a pocket when the mercury plummeted to "are you serious" degrees. You whistle because it never runs out of charge. And the only antenna you need is your breath. Your team pushes forward. They trust you. Every command, every course correction, every weird little melody you use to soothe or motivate them, it's been earned. But just because they obey doesn't mean you're off the hook. Because one thing you've learned: you can't fake a whistle. Not out here. The dogs know when your tone wavers, when fear creeps in. They hear it before you feel it, which means your voice, your whistled voice, must be steady, even when you're not, especially when you're not. A gust kicks up and nearly bowls you sideways. You dig and growl at the sky and whistle sharp an anchoring blast just enough to regroup the team. They hesitate for half a second. Then, miraculously, they dig deeper. Fur flying legs pumping their bodies, leaning together against the gale like a wall of muscle and trust. You want to cheer. Instead, you whistle a celebration trill. Nanook barks once in response. That's good enough. By midday, the storm softens to a grumble. Still windy, but manageable. The snow flurries more politely now, flaking down like dandruff from the sky, instead of trying to exfoliate your face with ice crystals. You make camp early. No sense pushing your luck. Once the tent is up and the dogs are bedded down in their little hollows, you sit on the sled with your cup of hoosh, thick, soupy, fishy, and steaming. It tastes like wet socks and survival. You whistle as you eat. Not on purpose. It just happens now. Little tunes. Shards of command phrases. A loop you picked up from Atka. That bare lullaby whistle you can't seem to stop humming. It drifts into the cold, curling up into the darkening sky. And something shifts inside you. You realize you've changed. You're not just learning anymore. You're speaking. This language, the whistles, the tones, the patterns, it's not foreign anymore. It's yours now. Not perfectly, not completely, but sincerely. And the dogs know it too. They respond faster, look to you sooner. Rest easier when they hear your evening tune. You whistle low and long one final loop for the night. They settle in like feathers. And you lean back, stretch your toes, and think about how far you've come since that first awkward puff of air, trying to sound like someone who belonged here. You do belong now. Because out here in the endless white there are no diplomas, no fluency tests. The only measure of your skill is how your dogs listen when the wind howls. And tonight they listened. You smile. Not a bad day. You take one last sip curl into your bag and let the hush wrap around you. Tomorrow you'll travel farther, but tonight you rest, with a whistle still lingering in your throat. The world is gold this morning. Not blinding, just soft, like someone took the sun and wrapped it in cheesecloth. The snow sparkles with it. The dogs blink sleepily in it. And your breath floats up in little honey-colored clouds as you stretch slow and stiff from your sleeping roll. You whistle a soft, rising phrase. Wake up time to move, and the team stirs like soup beginning to boil. Nanook is first up, of course, giving a full-body shake that sprays frost in every direction. The others follow tails, wagging tongues, lolling. They're rested, ready, and so are you. There's a rhythm now, a groove. You barely think as you pack camp, run your hand along the sled rails, check the knots, trace a line in the snow to test the firmness of the path ahead. You whistle twice. They line up perfectly. It wasn't always this smooth, but now it's like music. The journey continues over a low ridge, where the snow lies in lazy waves like a crumpled blanket. The sled glides without effort, the dogs pulling in perfect unison. You adjust with tiny foot movements. A shift of weight here, a heel dig there. Subtle. No vocal commands needed anymore. You whistle 2 long notes, 1 short, just to test. The dogs slow, then pick up again as you whistle the release. You smile. That one's new. You made it up yesterday, and it works. Historians still argue whether individual hunters crafted entirely personal whistling dialects or if regional standards existed across different Inuit communities. Some say there were shared tones especially for urgent calls. Others believe every hunter-dog pair developed their own private symphony, like a fingerprint audible only to each other. you believe both can be true. Because by now your team doesn't just respond to the pitch, they respond to you. The team crosses the ridge and dips into a quiet valley blanketed in untouched snow. No wind, no animal tracks, just stillness so complete it hums. And in that silence your whistle feels sacred. You play with it now, not to command, just to speak. You try an echoing pattern, bouncing the notes off a snowbank and waiting for them to return like sonar. Then a descending trill that sounds almost like a laugh. The dogs perk up ears, swiveling, and Nanook makes a curious grunt. A moment later, you hear something unexpected. A whistle. Not yours. Faint. Distant. Not a bird, not the wind. A human whistle. High and playful, like someone answering back. You freeze. No one's supposed to be out here. But there it is again, soft, rhythmic, familiar. Not an exact copy of your note, but close enough to recognize the structure. Someone is echoing you. Could it be another hunter? You send a response. 3 clear notes spaced carefully. A question. The answering whistle comes after a pause. Long, short, your own stop command. You laugh out loud, a puff of frost bursting into the golden air. Somebody's got jokes. You whistle again, a trill of amusement, then steer your team toward the sound. Not chasing it, just acknowledging it. In the old days, whistles were sometimes used to locate fellow hunters across vast open ice. When radios failed or hadn't yet been invented, it was a way of saying, "I'm here." You never expected to experience it yourself, but it makes sense. Whistle language doesn't just bind you to the dogs, it connects you to others too. The hunters before, the ones still out here, the ones who'll come after. Across the next rise you find no person, no tracks, just more snow and light. Maybe it was a trick of the air. Maybe not. Either way, you whistle a short farewell just in case. The dogs pick up the pace, responding like dancers returning to their routine. The rest of the day passes in a gentle rhythm. Glide, breathe, command, listen. The dogs weave through narrow passes, loop around old stone markers' cairns, left by someone else with frozen fingers and a story to tell. You recognize one of the shapes carved into the rock. It's a symbol meaning safe water in an ancient dialect. You pause and whistle the same shape, 3 notes staggered just like the carving. You don't know if it means anything to the team, but it means something to you. Tonight you camp at the edge of a frozen bay. The ice groans occasionally, but you're far enough inland to feel safe. You whistle a grounding tone anyway, more for comfort than caution. The dogs curl into their beds without prompting. You don't even need to give the settle whistle. They already know. You eat, sip hot broth, think. You realize this might be your last night in the wild for a while. Soon you'll return to people, to buildings, to metal doors and traffic and voices that don't carry on the wind. And you're not sure if they'll understand what you've learned out here. That a whistle isn't just a sound. It's a bridge, a promise, a map of breath and trust written in midair. That, to control a dogsled team with nothing but your mouth and your heart, is to speak a language older than most writing. One that can't be faked. One that rewards patience, humility, and the occasional absolutely ridiculous bear lullaby. So you sit in the golden dusk, the sky fading from peach to purple, and you whistle one last song for the day. Not a command, not a joke, not even a message. Just a thank you. To the dogs, to the wind, to whatever echoed your call on that snowy ridge. The team rustles. One of them sighs deep and content, and in the hush that follows you feel something settle in your chest. like a tune you'll never forget, like home. Now the fire burns low and slow. The dogs are asleep. The sled rests. Your boots are off. You wiggle your toes inside wool that's still damp but warm, and you let your eyes soften, not shut. Not yet, just heavy, like they've been holding the sky all day. Outside, the wind hushes to a whisper. It moves like a lullaby now, brushing gently at the tent walls. Just enough to remind you it's there. Just enough to keep you company. You lie back, hands behind your head, breath slow. Every inhale deeper than the one before. Every exhale looser. The whistle songs still float in your ears. Not loud, just remembered. Soft phrases made of air and intent. The ones that slowed the team. The ones that signaled joy. The silly ones that meant nothing but still made the dogs' tails wag. They echo now like ghost melodies circling your head, then fading into silence. Your fingers twitch almost as if they want to whistle too. But you don't need to. Not tonight. Tonight you rest. You are safe. You are full. You are heard. The journey waits for morning. But for now, let the wind do the singing. Let the dogs dream. Let yourself drift. Slow, soft, gone.